I'm guessing that a lot of people can relate to, especially smaller businesses like the one that I work for, not getting a lot of budget. So kind of like, you can do your thing, just don't come and ask us for money. So that's kind of it's not quite that bad, but definitely start talking E5 Microsoft license, double and triple what we're paying now. Not super excited to start paying for that. So that's kind of where I had to figure out how to do the best I could. Kind of like how Pope talked about in the keynote, like just do what you can. Anything's better than nothing. Just make little baby steps. I think a lot of us can get overwhelmed when you look at all this stuff that you can do, should be doing, want to do. Little bit at a time. Little baby bites rather than one big gulp. Okay. Anybody that's used Microsoft Office 365, all the programs involved, SharePoint, OneDrive, and even just Exchange, it's huge. It's changing all the time. You just, like I said, you just have to do it a little bit at a time. I think they did a great job with the tools that they give you to allow you to take little bites at this and track your progress. Well, like I said, we'll get into some of the tools that they show you. They've got some great visual guides that you can actually send to your executives and or your boss or whoever you're reporting to show them, hey, I'm making progress. Today is better than yesterday, and so forth and so forth. And that's really what a lot of bosses want to see, from what I've at least been my experience. So project management software, if you're not using it, even for yourself or some kind of task list, helps a lot. I know myself, I forget stuff. I'm sitting at home, even though I try not to work at home as well. But I'll be sitting at home and like, oh, I need to do that. And if I don't write it down, it's not going to happen. I'll remember it again in a week, and then I'll realize that I need to do it again, and the cycle will happen all over again. So use task lists, use a project manager. Bosses love to see that stuff, especially if they're copied on it. They can see that you're ticking stuff off of your list and you're actually working. So. Same thing with Office 365. In the last couple years, they're moving stuff around constantly. I still have to Google stuff. Even when I was writing these slides up, I'd set this stuff up and I still can remember, and they'd move stuff around. I had to Google, how do you do this? And because and a lot of times you have the new Exchange admin console or the old one. And my policy or my philosophy on that is they're going to give me a chance to use the new one. I'm guessing at some point they're going to force me to use that one. So I might as well just use it now, and get it over with. Might as well just learn how to use it, because this is probably the future. And I've tried to explain that to users, especially with the Mac version of Outlook. There's a little button, anybody uses a Mac with Outlook, there's a little button, use the new Outlook. I just tell them, there's going to come a time where an update's going to get pushed, and you're not going to be able to turn that off. So it's have pain now or have pain later, so pick your choice. This is just an overview of the stuff that we're going to go over. Like I said, this is not a comprehensive look. This is not an expert look, as you can tell by the title of it. This is just the beginning steps, the basic stuff that you can do with this. I think they changed the name of the license even. I think it's like Business. It used to be Business Premium. And I think they're just trying to get it across, so that's just the normal license. Now it's like Office 365 Business or something like that. It's basically just the main Office Exchange license along with the apps, basically. I'm guessing a lot of people have. And then you get into the E1, E3, E5, and there's a dozen add-on licenses or more for Azure AD, all kinds of different stuff to give you extra options, extra security controls. But like I said, all of those cost money per user, per month. And even if you've got 50 or 100 users, that's not $20 a month. It starts adding up to hundreds of dollars a month just for one control. And to justify that, it's difficult sometimes when you've got tight budgets. So at the top, of course, multi-factor. Go and take a look at any of your users' failed logins. I'd almost guarantee you're going to see logins from all over the world. If you have any visibility to your business at all on the internet, and your emails are out there, you're going to have failed logins. This is one of the things that I use to justify forcing everybody to get to MFA. and it's one of the best tools. There's obviously different flavors of MFA that Microsoft allows you to use now, including up to FIDO2, which is awesome. I'm guessing you're probably not going to get most users to carry around security keys, so Global Admin's great. Like I talked about the Compliance Manager, they give a lot of great tasks and steps, as well as a score. You get an overall score. You get to, they also, I think they used to compare it to other business sizes, like other license size, so you can kind of see where you're at, above average, below average. Audit logs, you used to have to turn those on. For the most part, they're on by default now, but I'd still double check. Data retention protects you from some ransomware or a user deleting files out of SharePoint or OneDrive, anything like that. As you all know, we oftentimes have to protect users from themselves, so that's a great tool to have. And alerts, I think I should probably, it's not really in order. I think alerts is probably higher up on this list. It's what allowed me to catch a couple different breaches, is getting alerts when certain things are set into place, when certain features are turned on in Office 365. Anytime a mail search is run on archive that you search for, I've had to do some searches for attorneys. Anytime those are run, I get an alert, even though it's usually me running it. It's nice to know that when those are happening. Backup Global Admin, along with using not using your user as the admin that you're logged into all the time, you should always have a backup. Especially if you're using security keys, have backup access. You get locked out of that admin, and I guess I've never had to look into it, but I'm going to guess it's probably not a very fun process to get back into that admin through Microsoft. Mail rules, it's going to allow you to block things before they even get to your users. Like I said, this is a lot of this stuff. We know phishing works. You spearfish your users, is going to work. Like we already know this. So the point is to stop that stuff from getting to your users. SPF, DKIM, DMARC, all email signing. For the most part, pretty easy to set up. This is going to have a big benefit to you getting your emails out to your customers. Depending on the size of customers, the size of people that you're sending emails to, your stuff could be put in spam and junk filters because it's not signed properly. As well as it stops people from spoofing your domain. So it's a really big important. Last one, Threat Explorer. This is where you're going to do some threat hunting. You can go through emails that your users have reported, emails that Microsoft has flagged as far as either viruses or spam or phishing attempts, anything like that. It's a great tool to find out who in your organization is getting targeted the most. Especially if you're rolling out MFA, those are the users that you want to start with, because those are the users that are getting hit the hardest, and it's usually the users that have been there the longest. Most of my team that are getting hit the hardest have been there since the company was founded 20 years ago. They're usually executives, so their email is kind of out there a lot more often, so they're communicating with a lot more people. And obviously they have access to more stuff. They're getting financial reports, stuff like that. So it's definitely the prioritization. Okay. One of the things in the compliance score is getting MFA set up for all users. You get points, I believe you get points for every user as far as that goes, and it kind of ups that score. And even if you just get them set up on SMS, it's better than nothing. It gets them started down that road of just realizing that this is the way things are now. Like, you don't just get to log into a new computer without having to use, multi-factor authentication. I always explain to users too. Most of my users are on one laptop for a year or two at least, for the most part, if they don't have problems. As long as they're not logging into another computer, another device, and getting a new phone, they probably won't even have to deal with this. It's easy to turn off and reset for your users. So if they get a new phone number or anything like that, they wipe their phone and they have the Authenticator app. That's the only thing they have. You can shut it off and turn it back on and reset that MFA. I love the Microsoft Authenticator app because it doesn't require an input into you don't have to copy a code. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal for us. Users hate that. It's a burden to them. So being able to use your watch or your phone and just tap approve, it makes it easier, and it's still fairly secure compared to, obviously compared to not having MFA. Azure AD just recently, I don't know, a few months ago, I don't remember exact date, started using FIDO2. If you haven't used FIDO2, it's supposedly unphishable because of the security exchange of the keys, basically. Don't just have one key, have a backup key, and have a backup to your backup key. Especially if you're going to do it properly, then shut all other authentication methods off besides that FIDO key. We have one. They're going to put in I actually just ordered a bunch of FIDO keys to set this up on ours because of what I found out that they finally support FIDO2. There's a lot of other manufacturers that are getting on. Bitwarden actually just turned on FIDO2 as well, rather than just doing before they just I had a YubiKey and they just had an OTP. You hit the key and it just pastes the code in there, which is not nearly as secure as FIDO2. That can be phished. You can click on the wrong link and you can put that into a spoofed website. I've tried to put the link to the Microsoft documents because they change stuff all the time. They always update theirs on how you set stuff up, on the options they have. Obviously, they didn't have FIDO2 before, and they're updating their documentation. Their documentation is usually pretty easy to find, and it's fairly well written, obviously, for as big an org as they are. I already talked about only required logging in a new device. I think just walking through users on, like I said, how very little impact this will have, as long as in 90% of the cases, it eased a lot of my users' worries about setting this up. Here's what you see when you sign in with two-factor on. You can set the priority in their authentication. You can have multiple, you can have SMS. It usually wants you to set backup SMS on there. So even if you set up a new account and you don't want SMS on there, as far as I know, it forces you to put it on there. You have to go back in later and delete it out of there. And then set the order. Whatever is at the top is what it immediately prompts you first. So I usually try to set my users with Authenticator app first, if they're able and willing to. And like I said, here's an example. You just literally just tap approve. There's no copying codes. There's no waiting for a code to time out like a normal, OTP code. Okay, kind of talked about this a little bit. Preaching to the choir here a little bit. Security keys. I'm guessing a lot of people have at least heard of them if they're not using them. There's lots of brands out there. I did some searches on Amazon, and it just seems like there's more and more companies even making these. YubiKey is obviously the big one. Google's been making their Titans for a while too. I even talked to, I don't remember who it was the other day. I think it was somebody in the speakers lounge that hadn't heard of Fission. I've used their keys for a little while. They're not as feature rich as YubiKey. As far as I can tell, what you're paying for the YubiKey, a lot of that is the software support. For the longest time, they had a special software made for Windows to use for passwordless logins, and it only worked in the YubiKeys. As we're moving over to more standards like FIDO2, it's less and less likely. I'm not sure if didn't check if Fission offers keys with the FIPS for the federal government standard. But if you're going to buy a YubiKey, I think I've heard in other talks people talking like there's no reason really, as far as I can tell, unless you're buying 1,000 keys and you're really on a budget, not to buy the FIPS just in case. And then you got it and you have it, and just in case you never know when you're going to need it in the future. I think they're like a $10 difference, $15 difference. $60 versus $70 kind of thing for the FIPS versus just the regular FIDO2 NFC. If you are on a budget, I just ordered a bunch of the Fission keys. I think with FIDO2 and NFC, they're like $22, $23. So I think, as far as I remember, the main USB-A YubiKey is like 50 or 60. So if you're buying a bunch of those, that's a big difference. It adds up. Fission even, I don't know if YubiKey does this, but I know Fission actually on their website advertises custom laser engraving too. I'm not sure it'd be a great idea to get your company name on them. As for security reasons, somebody loses it, that's the last thing you need. But you might be able to have some mark on there that obviously you guys know that's your company key kind of thing. Let's see here. Okay. Oh, this is just a list of the YubiKeys. As you can see, Yubico has a key that just supports the FIDO2 basically. And when you pay the extra money, you get NFC, and they even have the, bio keys. Fusion's had it for a while in a bigger, like Bluetooth kind of thing, but Yubico and Fusion have both kind of miniaturized theirs into the USB-A kind of keychain mode too. I have not get to use one of those. That's on my list to get one to try it out. Here's a list, just a portion of Fusion keys. They have ones you can that for USB-C and A that you can even leave in your computer, depending on your use case. That's really convenient. I have one at my house, and my desktop at home is kind of my backup key that I leave in there. So I figure if somebody's in my house, like that's the least of my problems at that point, is them having access to my security key. Compliance Manager. It used to be called Security Score or something like that. They've kind of encompassed it with other tools and kind of put them all together a little bit. It allows you to do HIPAA compliance, PCI DSS compliance, all kinds, basically anything you'd have, any security framework that you have to comply to. They have controls in there so that you can turn on and figure out, like, hey, this is what HIPAA requires, this is what PCI DSS requires, and you don't have this, and this turned on. I love the gamification of it. You can see real time, your progress. Like I talked about earlier, take baby steps, and you can see, even for yourself, even if your boss doesn't care, record it for yourself, and show that that you can see you're making progress. You're making your organization more secure. And like I said, a lot of us have non-technical managers and bosses. They know that 650 is higher than 600. Like they don't need to know exactly what you got to do to get to that 650, and I'm guessing most don't really care because they don't want to know about that stuff. They have other things to deal with. So this program, this module is huge. There's tons of stuff on it. You could probably do a talk just on this for 2 hours easily. There's just so much stuff on there, depending on what compliance you have to meet with, like I said, with HIPAA and ISO 27001, all that kind of stuff. There's just tons of information in there. There's hundreds of tasks that you can do to make your org more secure. The only thing, I can't remember if it used to do this. It's been a while since I've seen it in there. The only thing that I wish they would do, and obviously money is why they don't, is be able to sort things by the licenses that you have. What can I do with the licenses that I have without getting extra money? So what I got frustrated with a little bit is like going in, it's like, hey, you need to do this, and this is a high risk, you need to turn this on. Like, that's awesome, I'm gonna go turn this on, and yeah, you need Azure Premium AD licenses to do this, and it's $6 a user per month. I'm like, yeah, that's not gonna happen. So that's the downside of that I can see that I've had. Here's a look at it today. Like I said, it's changed a lot. They kind of put that compliance score front and center, and give you a little gauge and everything like that. I think you can even customize this layout a little bit depending on what your goals are, what you're working on. They give you a high level look of the most important tasks to turn on. I'm a big fan of this tool. It helped me a lot. It's because I end up catching a breach because of recommendations that they have me turn on. I'm not really sure why some of those weren't turned on by default. More of them are getting turned on by default, it seems. Like the auditing and stuff like that, and the logs. Not really sure why you wouldn't want logs turned on automatically, even if you didn't use them. But they've apparently taken that advice. Audit logs. Double check, like I said, most new, depending on how long you've had your tenant. I don't know if they actually flipped it on for all tenants or just new created. My guess is just new created tenants. So if you have an older tenant, you've had it for a few years or longer, and you haven't turned these on, you probably need to turn them on. Every product has 5, 6, 7 different things that you can search for by all users, by unique security groups you had set up, failed logins, anytime a mailbox item has been deleted, it gets very granular in there. The downside is that if you want logs for more than 90 days, you get to pay for it. So 90 days in our world, a lot of times is not that long of a time. I haven't looked into it that much. Just doing some research for this talk, I found out that at least at the time, there is some PowerShell commands that you can access logs for up to a year past that 90 days. But the web GUI, all you get is 90 days. And I've also found that web GUI to be a little bit buggy sometimes. I will search for logs for basically a previous week for a user, for something really basic that a user does all the time, even on my own user, and it says nothing. It'll say no logs found. And I was, okay, there should be logs for that. So keep that in mind. I haven't used PowerShell that much as far as this goes. So, but my guess is, like many things that access the PowerShell, it's probably more reliable than that web GUI. Probably a lot faster too. Data retention. Obviously, if you use OneDrive and you're storing, or SharePoint and you're storing critical information in there, we all know that it's possible to have a disgruntled user purposely delete something or even accidentally delete something. I'm guessing after talking to a lot of people, there's a lot of people here that work for governmental organizations and schools and stuff like that. As far as I know, GRAMA here in Utah, and I'm guessing a lot of others are fairly similar, requires organizations to keep data for at least 7 years. So that's one thing, obviously, we need to pay attention to. You don't want users deleting stuff and somebody in 5 years requesting a GRAMA request for it and you saying, oops, sorry, I don't have it. That probably is not going to go over very well. Obviously, this stuff's changing all the time. When I went in there to look at this, since I'd set it up, the interface looked completely different. So I had to even kind of learn it all over again. This can bite you in the butt. I had ours turned, I think it maybe even came defaulted to 7 years. I don't know why I had it on there. We don't have any requirements like that. I had a user that was trying to move a lot of data in and out of their OneDrive. I don't know if they just didn't need it and they were using it temporarily. And it held about 90% of their box at about 800 or 900 gigs. And I couldn't find, even turning it off, I even completely turned the data retention off, and it wouldn't release it. And it takes time. Like it says it can even take up to 24 hours to make that change. And even then, I still couldn't find an easy way to delete that data retention hold in there. So I'm hoping that eventually it will just go away. I had a lot of extra space, so I just gave the user extra OneDrive space, since a lot of the users that are in my org don't use it. So. But you have to be careful with that. If you use SharePoint, obviously, email is probably the big one, especially if you're a governmental organization. As far as I'm aware, most times when a GRAMA request is made, especially from newer news organizations or anything like that, it's usually for email. But a lot of times they will make requests for, I want any communication on this topic and these dates. And so the controls in Microsoft make it really easy to search for that stuff. You just kind of check boxes, basically. You type in a keyword and search, and it'll pull OneDrive, it'll pull SharePoint, any file that has that keyword match, it'll pull those. So it does make it pretty easily. When I've had to pull keyword searches on emails for lawsuits, and it's actually really simple. Even though it forces you, or at least at the time, it forced me to use, I don't even know if it wasn't even Edge. I think I had it forced me to use Internet Explorer to use this little tool to download the file. So that was kind of a pain in the butt, but overall, not too bad. Okay, I already covered this. Yep. Alerts. I think this, behind MFA, this is probably the most important. Like I said, this is how I caught a breach of a user. I have, anytime a forward gets turned on an email, I get an email saying that this user set up forwarding to their email. In my previous job as an IT consultant, I had a few clients. I had a real estate client that had a email forward on their G Suite set up, and for an undetermined amount of time. It could have been a month, it could have been 6 months, it could have been 2 years. They don't have any clue. And it was on one of the finance managers. So any financial transaction to this realtor went through this person's email. And this is actually, I ended up tracking that down because a customer had got a phishing email that my client wanted me to go check out. I went into it thinking probably just a generic phishing email. They just happened to be buying a house, and they got a phishing email about a financial transaction that this malicious actor sprayed out to a bunch of people, and they happened to catch somebody in there. I get out to this customer's house, I take a look at her laptop, and I pull up the email, and I'm looking at it, and in the subject line, there's an address to a house. And I asked the the woman that was the client, and I said, hey, what's the address of the house that you're buying? And she rattles it off, and it matches the address in the subject line. And I was like, wow, okay, that's probably not really generic. I think this person actually knew this person was buying this house, and they were, I don't know how expensive the house was. It was a high-end real estate agent, so it could have been hundreds of thousands of dollars that they just about wired to the wrong person. Because this person, this malicious actor, knew that they were buying this house, sent them an email, and told them, hey, we just need to change the wire instructions for this. We just need to send it to this one instead of this other one, just an update. And thankfully, all involved thought something was weird and called me in, and that's when we ended up tracking down an email forwarder set up on one of their email accounts. And we found a couple others as well. But like I said, since I had this alert set up, within minutes, I knew that this forwarder had been set up on this user's account. I called them, asked them if they set up a forwarder. They obviously didn't. I locked their I signed them out all accounts, changed their password, and logged into it and found out that keywords were set up for, I think it said like invoices and some other financial documents, kind of thing like that. So this actor was looking for just to forward financial documents. This is a big help. Obviously, if you want to spend some money, you got some E5 licenses laying around, you get a lot more tools from Microsoft. You get some behavioral analytics that they have built in where you're looking at different behaviors and different behavior patterns and not just if this then that happens. You get a lot more power in exactly what you're hunting for. So, okay. I'm going to admit I was using my user as a global admin as of a couple weeks ago, and I had somebody review this slideshow, and this slide was not actually about not using your user credentials as a global admin. It was more about having a backup just in case you lost access or you got hit by a truck tomorrow, and the company could still get into your account. So that's something we all should be planning for, is if you quit and they forget to get stuff from you, or like I said, you get sick and you're in the hospital, or whatever bad thing you can think could happen to you, we should all be planning. We don't want that business, going under just because of an accident. But this person, like I said, this gentleman that reviewed my slideshow, he's like, great, that's awesome. Yeah, we definitely shouldn't be using our main user as global admin. And I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that, I promise. So I changed it over. I have a separate global admin. It's not my email address anymore. And I've got a backup. I've had a backup for a while. We're going to have security keys. I think I ordered 3 or 4 of them that's set up on the account, and I'm going to inform my boss and his boss like what they're for, have them put in either, I don't know if they have a safe or just a filing cabinet or something to put them away, so that if mine gets lost, mine gets broken, we don't lose access to that. Obviously, if you're at home, I recommend doing the same thing. At the very least off-site. Most fire safes are rated, if you have to look in your fire safe, I think some of them might haven't. If you have thumb drives or hard drives in there, most fire safes are rated to that fire limit for ignition of papers or ignition of objects. That doesn't mean electronics are going to survive. So keep that in mind. Okay, perfect. Let's see here. Mail rules. Okay. Mail rules. How many think it's a great idea to have executable files getting sent to your users? This is how you stop it. Again, a lot of this stuff comes down to protecting users from themselves. If they never see it, they never get it, they can't click on it, and they can't open it. I had a user open a password-protected zip file from a hotel that they were going to be staying at, and because they needed the information in there, and they didn't think anything of typing that password and opening that and enabling macros on a Microsoft Word file. So, and that was soon after that I said that I figured out that you can actually block just password encrypted archive files, or you can block all archive files. I tried to block all archive files. It didn't go over so well. It turns out people still send a lot of zip files, and they get quite upset when you tell them to use OneDrive or Dropbox for some reason. I didn't think it was that difficult, but apparently it is. So we scaled it back to just password protected, because at that point, obviously, antivirus, Microsoft's scanning an AV can't look in that file if it's password protected, and obviously that's why they send it password protected. Oh, spam emails. We were getting, I'm sure if you've had executives out there for long enough at the company, you're going to get Gmail addresses with John Doe on it as your CFO. And unfortunately, the way Outlook and a lot of their email clients display it, they don't display the email address. They just display the actual to address that you're typing in there. I have no clue why. I'm starting to train users on how to look for that. If you have to hit reply and look at the reply address, that's the easiest way, do that. Look at the address first. But one thing that I've done to stop a lot of that is, at least for my executives, anything that comes from outside the organization that has their name on it, basically in the to field, just gets automatically quarantined. Like I said, it removes that even attempt to do it. And I've gotten a lot less, hey, is this fake or not, emails since doing that. So it's definitely saved my time and my sanity. SBF, DKIM, and DMARC, all of these, I'm going to admit, I'm not an expert in encryption or signing, anything like that. I can read a tutorial and set them up. It's really not that difficult. As long as you have access to DNS and can copy and paste for the most part, you can set these up. As you get, the SPF is obviously the easiest, but they're really not that difficult, and it goes a long ways from users, malicious actors spoofing your email and sending emails out to your clients and trying to phish them. This just goes through setting up SPF. The SPF's the easiest because it's, as far as I know, especially for Office 365, it's all the same, the same record for everybody. There's no changing for your domain or anything like that. You can go into the settings and it'll actually just let you copy and paste it. Anytime you set up a new domain, it actually tells you to set this up anyways. It won't stop you from setting it up if you don't set it, if you don't put that record in there, but it does walk you through that. I was watching a couple other talks, and I realized I don't have any funny memes in mine. So I apologize. I will fix that for next year. DKIM and DMARC, like I said, Microsoft's got great documentation, walks you through exactly how to set all this up. This stuff, and then there's a new Exchange admin console. All this stuff's all different. You can still, at the time I wrote this, you could still use the old one, and in my opinion, it's almost identical to on-site Exchange. So if you've managed on-site Exchange, the old Exchange admin console looks pretty close to that, and this stuff's pretty easy to find in there. They got to make it newer and prettier, so it looks like they're changing stuff. The new one's a little more difficult to navigate, at least in my opinion, because I guess I just know how to get through the other one. It's not much different than setting up SPF, but you have to set up a couple records and some of them in there, and you have to change some stuff in there as far as your domain goes and stuff like that. I would always double check, obviously. You can check headers after emails have been set, and it'll show you if it's signed properly. And there's header analyzers out there that you can just drop the header into, and it'll tell you, hey, DMARC set up, it's signed correctly, and it's working. Obviously, I'm hoping that most of us have in here, if you're adminning email and stuff like that, you've probably used MX Toolbox. Check for blacklists. There's a whole bunch of tools in there. One of them is an SPF checker, and it pretty quickly tells you if that record's found, basically. The other ones kind of have to authenticate a little differently than SPF, but SPF is basically checking, is there a record there or not? So make sure you double check those. Make sure you're verifying that they're set up properly. I think one of the either DMARC or DKIM, when I copied and pasted the record, there was a space at the end of the front of it and at the back of it. Let it go in there and it just wouldn't work. So I went and took it out, boom, went right through. So there's common little mistakes that you can make, so always double check that that's set up properly. Threat management console. If you like to threat hunt, obviously this is the place you're going to go. Anytime you have a lot of emails getting blocked, it's easy to go in here and see exactly what's getting blocked. Anytime I've got some downtime, I go in here and look. I've caught emails that have gotten blocked from clients that I was able to verify that were legit, and they were important business, emails from a client. So that went to one of our VPs, and he would have been kind of upset if he didn't get that email. So Obviously, I would double check with them that you let them know, hey, this was caught in quarantine. It looks like it's fine, but be careful with it. Don't go clicking on any links or anything in it or anything like that. So there's lots of controls in here for how it's blocking stuff, how much it's grabbing of stuff is. Obviously, it's kind of like a 1 through 10 scale as far as how it rates stuff. Basically, it looks at an email and says, "Hey, this is a 6 for spam." It kind of we're reasonably certain this is probably spam. So you can control that if you're getting too much or too little, where that's at, and fine tune it. It's probably going to take a little while. I haven't had to adjust ours very much, but most of my users don't check their junk mail folder. So I guess I check mine all the time, and mine is usually pretty good about it. Okay. Oh, like I talked about earlier on the summary, this is, like I said, this will give you your, I think, top 5 or 10 5 top users that will have been getting phishing emails. And I a lot of times will send this out to them too, and just to kind of give them a heads up, like, hey, even though you're not seeing these emails come through, they're getting stopped by Microsoft. You had 300 phishing emails got sent to your email address last month. So you need to be more careful than other users. If it helps, I don't know. I guess it's better than not telling them. So, but I obviously, if you're going to start implementing security features, those are the users, especially MFA, those are the users to start with. And depending on how big your org is and how much financial control a user has, maybe you convince those users to use a security key. Like I said, even with FIDO2, even if they leave the key in their desktop at work, it's better than letting them get phished. Here's just a look at this. This is the sample one. It wasn't going to do any much good to take a picture of mine because I would have to, redact a lot of it, obviously. But like I said, you can customize this. Obviously, Microsoft kind of picks what they think is most important and kind of shows it to you, so you can kind of get an overall view, and gives you some insight, and you can dig even deeper. I think, like I said, I think you can even customize the view that you get here. More trends and stuff like that. It's a good idea to keep an eye on this and just know the baseline. A lot of monitoring and a lot of tracking and stuff like that is knowing that, hey, we usually get about 4,000 or 5,000, malware emails a month or a day or whatever. I think this is a day. All of a sudden it's 15,000. What's going on? I probably need to be doing a little more digging, a little more looking at logs, a little more looking at Splunk or Graylog or whatever you have, and maybe pulling up a little more of the emails that have been blocked and looking at what's getting blocked. Maybe it's going to just one user. Maybe one user got phished and they're now a bigger target. Okay, we're looking for time. If you have some money to spend, there's a lot of things you can spend it on, obviously. Microsoft is very good at taking your money. They're happy to take it. One of the things that I wish I could have done, and the kind of the reason that prompted this talk, is I wish I could have geo-blocked some IPs. Our firewall, I've got a lot of countries blocked because we don't do any business with them. We don't access any websites from there. There's no reason to even have those open. A lot of the Chinas, the Russias, a lot of the African countries, a lot of the stuff like that. I would have loved to block them, and I tried to block them, but you can't do that without Azure Premium AD licenses. I think it's like $5 or $6 a month just for that license. But I think, as far as I know, if you're going to start getting those licenses, a lot of that stuff is included with either E3 or E5 as you're getting it. So obviously they're bundling all that stuff together and giving you a better deal. As you pay for Azure Premium AD, you get more automatic reports that you can launch and have controls over. You get more logging. You get longer logging. You get, obviously, like we talked about with the 90 days. If you want logs longer, you have to pay for it. You get more password policy control. As far as I'm aware, unless they've changed it, the only real password policy control that you have over on a regular license is what they call it strong passwords, basically. They won't let users use just regular, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of stuff. And it's all or nothing, it's on or off, basically. This one you can control. Hey, I want all my users to have at least 12 characters, 15 characters, whatever it is. You get more control over that, obviously. There's a lot more in those Azure AD premium licenses. You get connectors with local AD and stuff like that. You can start doing a lot of cool stuff like that. There's a lot more control over other parts, SharePoint and all that kind of stuff that you get with those Azure AD point license too. I haven't used it. I had a friend actually recommend I put this in here though because he's used it. The phishing simulation and training that you can use with your users if you get Defender 365. You get Defender 365 level 1 with the regular premium license. That's what they call it. That's what that kind of threat console and all that kind of stuff. That's level 1, Defender 365 level 1. As far as I know, I think you can purchase level 2 on its own. But when you start purchasing that stuff, it doesn't really make much sense. You might as well just get E5 licenses. You get bigger mailboxes. You get everything that goes with that. And if you piecemeal a lot of this stuff, you're up at $22, $25, $30 a month per user anyways. I think the E5 licenses are in the 20s. Like the last time I checked, it was 22 or 25 or something like that. I don't have them, and my org's probably not going to pay for those, so I don't really track it that much. You also get a lot of more advanced threat tracking. You get the heuristics and the behavioral analysis. You can set up, hey, if this user all of a sudden starts moving, all of a sudden starts deleting 50 or 100 gigs out of their OneDrive, and they haven't deleted more than a couple gigs in the last 6 months, send an alert out. I need to know about it. That's some really nice stuff to have. I would love to have that kind of stuff. We don't have a huge threat model as far as that goes, so even though I'd love to nerd out on it and play with it, probably not super practical. But I've used the Sophos phishing tracking before, and I really like it. I don't remember, it's a few dollars per month per user as far as the Sophos one. So if you can get it included and you're already getting E5 licenses anyways, or you already have E5 licenses, it works really well. I kind of looked it over really quick, and I've had friends that have used it, and they said it works really well, and they really like it. And there's lots of great training in there to prevent, like I said, prevent users from getting phished. So that's it. Any questions? For the most part, that's what I've had set up as far as like the blocking phishing emails and stuff. Yeah, I think I might have tweaked it a little bit. The defaults for the anti-spam, I think I might have even turned the spam down a little bit. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've tweaked them, but for the most part, I've left most of that stuff in the default. They're pretty good right at the defaults. I don't unless you've got a really fringe use case where you have a really high profile web presence, where you have lots of clients and stuff hitting it and stuff like that. I would think that the defaults are probably pretty close. It's marking them phishing when they're not? Yeah, I get probably, when I have it turned on to a manageable level, I'd say about 80% of what's blocked is false alarms. Oh, gotcha. Yeah, like I said, I'm guessing it just depends on your use case and on your threat model and who has you, where those emails have been out to and who has them and stuff like that, and what websites they've been posted to. Obviously, I know one of the reasons a lot of governmental organizations were getting hit down in Florida with ransomware is all these public officials, their emails are displayed, on the websites. Their org chart is displayed on there, and they know exactly who's boss, and so they're getting hit hard. So I think that just really depends on that. That's my guess. Most of our emails, I'm guessing, outside of a couple of our executives, are not really publicly displayed. So I'm guessing that's probably why we don't have a ton of issue with that. Cool. Any more? There you go.
The email security features you set up, do you use that in tandem with like a security gateway, or do you just use Microsoft exclusively for email?
Do you mean like a separate scanner, like Barracuda or Sophos or anything like that? No, we're just using Microsoft's. Yeah, their controls are pretty good in there. They give you a lot of great if this then that happens, and there's a lot of selectables like password protected attachments or EXEs and all that kind of stuff. And so it's actually, there's a lot of great options in there, I think. Cool. Any more? Okay. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.